Welcome back to the explainer. So you've meticulously written the logic, you've optimized your loops, and you've got your architecture perfectly structured. But now comes the actual test. Today, we're diving straight into what we call day 23. In any project lifecycle, day 23 is the ultimate gatekeeper. It's the exact make or break moment where we completely strip away all of our assumptions. It is the point where we stop hoping the code functions and start strictly proving that it works, long before it ever gets near a user. Here's exactly how we're going to break this down today. We'll start with a day 23 testing review methodology, move into unit and integration tests, figure out how to spot missing tests, tackle the headache of flaky tests, and wrap up by closing coverage gaps. All right, let's jump right into step 1, the day 23 testing review methodology. Day 23 isn't just a casual check. It's a heavily guarded boundary line. Your code is literally not allowed to pass through this gate until it survives a massive, multifaceted testing audit. You know, a lot of times, testing is treated as this annoying afterthought, just a quick box to check at the end of a sprint. But treating it as a dedicated, impenetrable review stage, that shifts a team's entire culture from being reactive to being fiercely proactive about code reliability. Moving right along to step 2, let's look at how we establish the foundation of this quality funnel with unit and integration tests. Think of a unit test like examining a single gear in a watch. You're zooming in, verifying its shape, its teeth, its structural integrity, entirely in isolation. But, well, a perfect gear doesn't actually tell you if the watch can keep time, right? That's exactly where integration tests come in. They look at how that gear interacts with the springs and the hands. You absolutely need both. Proving a standalone piece of logic is sound is great, but verifying that it actually talks to your database without crashing the whole system is what actually delivers value. So, by strictly enforcing both unit and integration tests, you're laying down the bricks for a serious, dual-layered defense. You prove the pieces work, and you prove the machine works. But as solid as the space is, the tests you actually write are only half the story. That brings us to step 3, spotting the missing tests, where we have to hunt down our blind spots. Because sure, you have your unit and integration tests, but what about the logic that was left completely unchecked? It is incredibly easy to look at a list of passing green check marks and feel this false sense of security. But what if the developer only tested the happy path? You know, the scenario where the user does everything flawlessly. What happens when the network inevitably drops midway through, or when a user just decides to type the word potato into a phone number field? Actually, forgetting to write a test is arguably way worse than writing a failing one. A failing test loudly announces that there's a problem, demanding your attention right now. Missing tests, though? They're invisible vulnerabilities. They just sit silently in your codebase, ticking away like a time bomb, waiting for a real user to do something slightly weird and completely crash your system. You really have to develop a sixth sense for what isn't there. A top-tier reviewer doesn't just read the code they're given, they stop and ask, wait, what scenario did we completely forget to account for here? Spotting those missing pieces is absolutely mandatory to survive the day 23 process. Next up is step 4. Dealing with flaky tests. This is all about managing instability. We have all been here. You run your test suite on Tuesday, and it passes perfectly. You run the exact same suite on Wednesday without changing a single line of code, and it fails. Then you hit run again, and it magically passes. This intermittent failure is honestly one of the most dangerous things that can happen in a codebase. These flaky tests create a massive boy who cried wolf scenario. When a team gets used to seeing random, occasional test failures, they inevitably start to just ignore them. They'll say, oh, it's just a network hiccup, or it's a weird timing thing. And the very second your team starts ignoring a red, failing build, you've completely lost the value of automated testing. Real critical bugs will slip right through to production because everybody just assumed it was another flaky test. Stability is just as vital as coverage. If your foundation is flaky, the whole entire stack is at risk of falling over. In a day 23 review, a flaky test is treated exactly like a failed test. It has to be investigated, fixed into a predictable state, or yanked out entirely until it can be trusted. Absolutely no free passes. Finally, we step back for the big picture with step 5, closing coverage gaps. You know, it's super easy to celebrate when you hit an 80% coverage threshold. That feels great. But in a massive enterprise system, that 20% gap is terrifying. That slice could represent thousands, maybe millions of lines of complex legacy code that nobody has dared to touch or write tests for. It's a dark, unexplored corner of your application, and it leaves your system completely exposed. Checking for those coverage gaps acts like a giant flashlight in those dark corners. It gives us a hard, mathematical truth about the code. If we missed testing an edge case earlier on, a coverage report is going to aggressively highlight the exact lines of logic that were never ever executed. It's the ultimate truth teller to make sure our earlier steps were actually comprehensive. So by systematically layering all of this together, unit tests, integration tests, catching the missing scenarios, curing the flaky logic, and sealing up those coverage gaps, we completely transform a basic code review. It goes from a subjective, quick scan into an impenetrable fortress of quality control. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Take a hard look at your most recent pull request. Did you truly prove it works? Or is your code base hiding a flaky foundation? Answering that honestly might just dictate whether you can actually sleep through the night on your next launch day. Thanks for joining this explainer, and we will see you in the next one.